My son handed me a bill for $250,000 to pay for a wedding I was explicitly banned from attending, all because his new family decided I was too working class to be seen in their photos. He attached a note telling me to be thankful for the opportunity to contribute, assuming I was just a confused, lonely pensioner they could bully into silence. If this story finds you, hit that subscribe button and let me know where in the world you're watching from, because you need to witness this surgery. They thought they were discarding a helpless old man, but they had absolutely no idea they had just declared war on the one person holding the kill switch to their entire $20 million future. The silence in my kitchen didn't just break, it shattered. A low electric hum vibrated against the window pane, a frequency that I felt in my teeth before I heard it with my ears. It was the sound of pressure building in a closed system. I looked out. A massive, obsidian black SUV was devouring the space in my small driveway. It didn't look like a car. It looked like a weapon, sleek, armored, and out of place against the peeling paint of my porch. My son Liam stepped out first. He paused at the door, adjusting his tie in the side mirror. He checked his reflection once, then twice. I spent 40 years as a perfusionist, running heart-lung machines in the OR. I know what panic looks like on a monitor, and I know what it looks like on a face. Liam looked terrified. Then the passenger door swung open. Tiffany Sterling emerged. She was 30, blonde and sharp as a diamond cutter. She didn't look at the old oak trees or the cloudy sky. She looked at my house like it was a stain on her white dress. I wiped my hands on a rag, grease from the sink trap staining the cloth. I didn't open the door immediately. I stood back in the shadows of the hallway, watching them. "He's in there," I heard Liam whisper through the thin glass. "Fix your face," Tiffany hissed, her voice cutting through the wood. "Remember the plan. The plan." My stomach tightened. It was the same sensation I used to get when a surgeon nicked an artery, a sudden drop in pressure, a warning that things were about to bleed out. I opened the door. "Dad," Liam said, his voice cracked, a teenager's break in a grown man's throat. Tiffany walked past him. She didn't smile. She didn't offer a hand. She swept past me into the hallway, leaving a trail of scent behind her, cold cash and aggressive perfume. She entered my living room, her eyes scanning the space like a laser grid. They stopped on my old armchair. It was Eleanor's favorite spot. The leather was worn, cracked by 40 years of reading, napping, and living. It held history. Tiffany reached into her purse and pulled out a silk handkerchief. With a look of pure, clinical disgust, she wiped the seat. She checked the cloth for dust, frowned, and then, and only then, did she sit. I stood by the kitchen counter, crossing my arms. I didn't offer them coffee. You don't offer comfort to an infection. "We have news," Liam said. He was wringing his hands, knuckles white. "We set the date, October 15th. Tiffany cut in, silencing him with a glance. "The Sterling Country Club. My father is flying in chefs from Paris," she continued, looking at my old coffee pot like it was a dead rat. "It will be the event of the season. Senators, CEOs, the elite." I looked at Liam. He was staring at the floorboards, unable to meet my gaze. "That sounds expensive," I said quietly. "It is," Tiffany said, "but necessary." She smoothed her dress, a gesture that felt like she was wiping her hands of me. "Arthur, we need to talk about the guest list." The air in the room changed. It became heavy, suffocating. The oxygen levels in the room dropped. "My parents are very particular," she said. "This is a merger of families, a branding opportunity." She paused, waiting for me to catch up. Her eyes were devoid of anything human. "We hope you understand. It would be appropriate if you didn't attend." I felt a physical blow to my chest, harder than a defibrillator paddle. My own heart skipped a beat. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I taught to fish on the dock. "Liam?" I asked. Liam finally looked up. His eyes were wet, swimming in guilt, but his jaw was set in a rigid line. "It's for your own good, Dad," he said. The words tasted like ash. "You'd be uncomfortable. You don't fit the brand. We'll have a private dinner later. Just us," he added quickly, the lie spilling out fast. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just went cold. My late wife, Eleanor, hated arrogance. She always feared Liam was weak, that he would fold under pressure. In that moment, staring at the stranger wearing my son's face, I realized she was right. "Get out," I said. Tiffany blinked, her mask slipping for a millisecond. "Excuse me? Get out of my house," I whispered. It wasn't a request. It was a diagnosis. The tissue was necrotic. It had to be cut away. They stood up. Tiffany rolled her eyes, annoyed at the inconvenience. Liam looked like he wanted to vomit. They walked out the door without looking back. I watched the SUV reverse out of the driveway. My neighbor Sarah Jenkins was standing at the fence. Sarah was a retired nurse, sharp eyes, always watching. She saw my face. She didn't wave. She just nodded once. She knew war had just been declared. A week passed. The silence in the house had settled like dust, heavy and gray. I sat in the garden, a book on my lap that I hadn't turned a page of in an hour. The autumn air was crisp, but I felt a phantom chill, the kind that settles in your bones when the circulation is poor. A courier truck pulled up to the curb, the engine idling with a rough, impatient chug. The driver, a young man in a hurry, handed me a thick leather portfolio. It was heavy, expensive. The leather was soft, the kind that costs more than my first car. I carried it to the kitchen table. The house creaked around me. The settling of timber, the groan of pipes. It felt empty. I opened the portfolio. Inside lay a single sheet of creamy, high-stock paper. Invoice from the office of Liam and Tiffany Venue. $80,000. Catering $120,000. Honeymoon $50,000. Total due $250,000. I stared at the numbers. My hands started to shake, a tremor I hadn't felt since my first year in the OR. This wasn't an invitation. It was a bill. A yellow sticky note was attached to the bottom. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Liam's, cramped, leaning to the left. "Dad, I know you're not coming, but Tiffany said you should be thankful I'm letting you contribute." I read the last line and the air left my lungs. "Wire the funds from Mom's trust immediately." I set the paper down. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me to pay for the party I was banned from. They treated me like a bypass machine, necessary to keep the flow going, but something to be discarded once the operation was a success. They thought I was just the gatekeeper. They forgot something important. I was the owner of the gate. I picked up the phone. My fingers were cold as I dialed. "Harrison," I said. "Harrison has been my lawyer for 40 years. He's a man who measures his words like doses of medicine." I could hear the faint shh of him polishing his glasses on his tie. "Arthur?" Harrison answered. His tone shifted instantly. "You sound focused." "They triggered the clause," I said. "Are you sure?" "I'm holding the invoice," I said. "Check the will." I heard the rustle of heavy paper, the sound of a file cabinet sliding open on well-oiled tracks. Then, the rhythmic tapping of a finger on a desk. "The Eleanor Miller Trust," Harrison read aloud. $20 million. He paused. The silence on the line stretched tight. "The character clause," he said softly. "Read it," I commanded. "Beneficiary must demonstrate integrity and unwavering loyalty to the grantor's spouse." Harrison stopped. He let the words hang in the air between us. "If he fails," Harrison continued, his voice devoid of emotion, "the money goes to the scholarship fund." "Has he shown loyalty?" Harrison asked. I looked down at the $250,000 demand. I looked at the note that dismissed me while reaching for my wallet. I thought of Eleanor. She had seen this coming. She had diagnosed the weakness in our son's heart, long before I was willing to admit it. "No," I said, "he has failed." "Then we dissolve the trust," Harrison said. "I'll draft the paperwork." "Not yet," I replied. "Arthur, I want to be sure," I said. "I need to run a stress test. In my line of work, you don't just guess. You verify. You push the system to see where it breaks. I needed to see how far they would go. I needed to know if the rot was superficial, or if it went all the way to the bone. I pulled out my checkbook. My personal checking account. Not the trust. I wrote the date. I wrote Liam Miller and Tiffany Sterling. I wrote the amount. $1. On the memo line, in neat, steady cursive, I wrote full payment for groom's contribution, as requested. I tore the check out. The sound was sharp, final. I put it in an envelope. I stamped it. I walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. I raised the red flag. It was a trap, and I knew, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that they would walk right into it. 2 days later, the phone rang. In the dead silence of my kitchen, it sounded like a fire alarm. I was washing a single plate, my dinner. I turned off the faucet. The water dripped, drip, 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 and I dried my hands. I knew who it was. I picked up the receiver. "Are you crazy?" Liam's voice wasn't just loud. It was shrill. It was the sound of a monitor spiking, the heart rate jumping into the red. "A $1 check?" he screamed. "You're trying to ruin me. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "You asked for a contribution," I said, my voice steady, calibrated. I gave what I thought was appropriate for the way I was treated. There was a scuffle on the other end, the sound of a phone being snatched. Then a new voice, lower, colder. "You senile old fool. Tiffany." She didn't shout. She hissed. It was the sound of pressurized gas escaping a valve. "We know there are millions in that trust," she said. "That is Liam's birthright. You are holding it hostage." "It's not a hostage situation, Tiffany," I said. "It's a character assessment." "Listen to me very carefully, Arthur," she said. The venom in her tone was palpable. "If you don't wire the $250,000 by tomorrow, we will take steps." "Steps?" "We will sue you," she said. "We will have you declared mentally incompetent." I tightened my grip on the phone until the plastic creaked. My heart hammered against my ribs, a heavy, thudding rhythm. Incompetent. The word hung in the air like a diagnosis. "We'll put you in a state nursing home," she continued, her voice devoid of mercy. "We'll take control of the estate ourselves. You'll die in a room with white walls and a locked door." The line went dead. I stood there, the receiver still in my hand. The dial tone hummed, a flat line. They weren't just greedy, they were dangerous. They were willing to amputate me from my own life to get what they wanted. I needed a second opinion. I needed allies. I called Elena. She was Harrison's paralegal, a woman who treated information like a weapon. She snapped gum when she found dirt, and she always found dirt. "Elena," I said, "I need you to dig." "On who?" she asked. I heard the snap of her gum. "Tiffany Sterling, and her father Marcus." "Consider it done," she said. She didn't ask why. She just went to work. An hour later, a knock at the door. It was distinct. 3 sharp raps, then a pause. I knew that knock. It was Dr. Elias Thorne. He had been my doctor for 20 years. We played chess on Thursdays. He was a friend, or so I thought. I opened the door. "Elias, what are you doing here?" He stood on the porch, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the door frame, at his shoes, at the sky. "Can I come in, Arthur?" he asked softly. I stepped aside. He walked into the living room but didn't sit. He was tapping his pen against his leg. Tap, 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 a nervous tick. "Arthur," he mumbled, "I had a visit from Mr. Sterling yesterday." "Tiffany's father?" I asked. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "He's a powerful man, Arthur," Elias said, his voice trembling. He made a large donation to the hospital wing, the new cardiac unit. We've been desperate for funding." My stomach dropped. It felt like the floor had opened up. "What did you do, Elias?" The tapping stopped. "I signed an affidavit," he whispered. "An affidavit?" "Stating you've been showing signs of dementia," he said. The words came out in a rush, as if he wanted to get rid of them. "Confusion, aggression, irrational financial behavior." The room spun. My own doctor, my chess partner. He had sold me out for a new wing. "You signed it?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. "I had to," Elias said, pleading now. The hospital needed the money. "Think of the patients, Arthur." "I am thinking of the patient," I said. "Me." I looked at him. I saw the fear in his eyes, the weakness. He was just like Liam, compromised. "Get out," I said. "Arthur, please, get out," I roared. He flinched. He turned and left, head down, tapping his pen against his leg. I locked the door behind him. I leaned against the wood, breathing hard. I was alone, cornered, betrayed by my son, betrayed by my doctor. But as my breathing slowed, a cold clarity washed over me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a broken machine ready for the scrapyard. They were wrong. I still had a pulse, and I wasn't finished. Monday morning arrived with the color of bruised steel. Rain lashed against the kitchen window, blurring the world outside into gray streaks. I sat with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. I wasn't drinking it. I was waiting. At 9 a.m. sharp, a sedan pulled up. It wasn't a courier this time. It was a man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit. He walked up the path, dodging puddles, clutching a thick envelope against his chest to keep it dry. He didn't knock. He rang the doorbell, long, insistent. I opened the door. "Arthur Miller?" he asked. He didn't make eye contact. He was looking at a clipboard. "Yes. You've been served. He thrust the stack of papers into my hands and turned away before I could even grip them properly. He walked back to his car, got in, and drove off. Just a delivery mechanism for a bomb. I closed the door. The papers were heavy, damp at the edges. I walked to the kitchen table, my movements mechanical. I sat down. I put on my reading glasses. Emergency guardianship hearing plaintiff, Liam Miller. Defendant, Arthur Miller. The words swam for a second. Plaintiff, Liam Miller. My son. The boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged. The man whose college tuition I had paid. He was suing me. I turned the page. Exhibit A, evidence of cognitive decline and irrational financial behavior. Attached was a photocopy of the check. The check for $1.. They weren't bluffing. They had taken my sarcasm, my lesson in character, and twisted it into a symptom. They argued that only a mentally compromised person would send a single dollar to cover a $250,000 invoice. They claimed it was proof I no longer understood the value of money. I felt a cold sweat prickle my hairline. It was a classic misdiagnosis, deliberate and malicious. I picked up the phone. My hand was steady, but my chest felt tight, like a clamp had been placed on the aorta. Harrison, I said. They filed, he replied instantly. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sounded tired. I have a copy on my desk. The hearing is Friday. They're using the check, I said. I know, Harrison said. It's their smoking gun. They're painting a picture, Arthur. Old man. Alone. Erratic behavior. Alienating his family. They have the affidavit from Dr. Thorne. Elias, I spat the name out. He sold me out for a cardiac wing. We'll deal with Elias, Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. But first you need to hear what Elena found. Did she dig? She hit bedrock, Harrison said, and she found the leak. I heard the rustle of papers on his end. Arthur, are you sitting down? I am. Liam isn't just asking for money for the wedding, Harrison said slowly. He's desperate. Desperate? He's in debt. Massive debt. To the bank? No, Harrison said. To Marcus Sterling. The name hung in the air. Tiffany's father. The man with the obsidian SUV and the cold eyes. Gambling debts, Harrison continued. High-stakes poker rings in the city. Liam has been losing for 2 years. He owes Sterling nearly $3 million. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. The rain tapped against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Like a finger on a table. Sterling owns him, Harrison said. He's not just the father-in-law. He's the loan shark. If Liam doesn't get access to your trust fund, Sterling is going to crush him. He'll take everything. His career, his reputation, maybe his freedom. I closed my eyes. The image of Liam adjusting his tie in the side mirror flashed in my mind. The terror in his eyes wasn't just about facing me. It was about facing the man in the passenger seat. My son wasn't just weak. He was a hostage, and he was willing to sacrifice his own father to pay his ransom. He's trying to commit me to pay off his bookie, I whispered. Essentially, Harrison said. It's ugly, Arthur. It's the ugliest thing I've seen in 40 years of law. Can we prove it? Elena is working on the paper trail, but Sterling is careful. He deals in cash and favors. Let them try, I said. My voice surprised me. BBTer in Kaporten. And when he's expecting Safa. No 10, I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of the man who used to hold a human heart in his hands and keep it beating when the body wanted to die. Arthur? Let them take me to court, I said. Let them put me on the stand. If they want a show, Harrison, I'll give them a show. We need a strategy, Harrison warned. The judge will be looking at that check and Thorne's testimony. I have a strategy, I said. I looked out the window at the gray sky. I need you to call the State Board of Psychiatry, and I need you to call Sarah. Sarah Jenkins, your neighbor? She sees everything, I said, and she has a security camera pointing right at my driveway. I'll call her, Harrison said. I could hear the smile in his voice. See you in court, Arthur. I hung up. I looked at the lawsuit again. Plaintiff Liam Miller. I took a pen and drew a line through his name. Not anymore. Now he was just the opposition. Friday morning. The courthouse smelled of floor wax, old mahogany, and dry cleaning fluid. It was a sterile, artificial smell, the scent of places where lives are dissected and reassembled by strangers. I sat next to Harrison at the defendant's table. My hands were folded on the polished wood. I kept them still. In the OR, trembling hands kill patients. Here, they lose cases. Across the aisle, the plaintiff sat. Tiffany wore white, a soft, innocent cream color. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. She looked like a grieving daughter. Liam wore a charcoal suit, tailored to hide the weight he'd lost. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the water pitcher on his table, watching the condensation slide down the glass. In the back row of the gallery, a shadow loomed. Marcus Sterling. He sat with his arms crossed, chewing on an unlit cigar. He wasn't there for moral support. He was there to ensure his investment paid off. "All rise," the bailiff barked. Judge Vance swept in. She was a woman of 60 with eyes that had seen every lie a human being could tell. She sat, adjusted her robes, and looked over her glasses. "In the matter of the emergency guardianship of Arthur Miller," she read. Her voice was dry as dust. "Proceed." Tiffany took the stand first. She was magnificent. If lying were an art form, she was a master. He's just not himself, Your Honor," she sobbed, a single perfect tear tracking down her cheek. "He forgets where he is. He becomes aggressive over small things." She held up the copy of the check. "He sent us $1 for a wedding contribution," she wailed. "He mocked us. He thought it was funny. It's clear cognitive decline. He doesn't understand the value of money anymore." Judge Vance looked at me. I held her gaze. I didn't blink. I didn't scowl. I remained a statue. "Thank you," the judge said, her face unreadable. Then Liam took the stand. This was the incision. This was the cut that would bleed. "State your name," the bailiff said. "Liam Miller." "Mr. Miller," his lawyer began, a slick man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Why are you filing for guardianship?" Liam swallowed. I saw his Adam's apple bob. He glanced at Marcus Sterling in the back row. Sterling nodded, a microscopic movement. "I'm doing this to protect him," Liam lied. His voice shook. "He needs professional help. I just want to manage his affairs before he hurts himself." "He is my father," Liam added, looking at the floor. "I love him." I felt something fracture inside my chest. It wasn't my heart that was just a pump. It was the hope I had been holding on to for 30 years. The hope that I had raised a good man. Time of death, 10:14 a.m. "The plaintiff's rest," the lawyer announced. The room went quiet. The air conditioning hummed, a low drone of recycled air. Harrison stood up. He didn't look at Liam. He took off his glasses and wiped them slowly with a microfiber cloth. It was a theatrical pause, calibrated to lower the room's blood pressure. "Your Honor," Harrison began, his voice low and smooth, "we have 3 exhibits." He walked to the bench. "Exhibit A," Harrison said. Tiffany smirked. She was expecting Dr. Thorne's affidavit. She was ready to watch me crumble. "A psychiatric evaluation," Harrison said, "from the State Board of Psychiatry." Tiffany's smirk vanished. Liam's head snapped up. "Dated yesterday," Harrison continued. "Independent review, ordered by the defense." He handed the file to the judge. She opened it. The pages rustled loudly in the silence. "This states Mr. Miller is of sound mind," Judge Vance read. She looked up, her eyebrows raised. "It says he possesses exceptional cognitive health and recall." She looked at the plaintiff's table. "This contradicts Dr. Thorne's affidavit entirely." "Dr. Thorne," Harrison said, "is currently under investigation by the medical board for falsifying records in exchange for charitable donations." Marcus Sterling shifted in his seat. The wood creaked. "Exhibit B," Harrison said. He held up the invoice. "The plaintiffs claim my client is incompetent," Harrison said, turning to face the room. "They claim he cannot manage his finances. Yet 3 weeks ago they sent him this." He placed the $250,000 demand on the overhead projector. The numbers glowed on the wall, stark and undeniable. "They asked an incompetent man to wire $250,000, Harrison said. "If he is too sick to manage his own money, why were they asking him for it?" The judge frowned. She looked at Liam. "Explain this," she ordered. Liam stammered. We didn't think." "Exhibit C," Harrison interrupted. "We have a witness." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Sarah Jenkins walked in. She wore her Sunday best, a floral dress and a cardigan. She clutched her purse with both hands. She walked past Marcus Sterling without flinching. She took the stand. "I was gardening," she said, her voice clear and sharp. "When the threats were made, my security system records audio." She pulled a small digital drive from her purse. Harrison plugged it into the court system. Static filled the room. Then voices, clear as a bell. "You senile old fool," Tiffany's voice hissed through the speakers. "We will have you declared mentally incompetent. We'll put you in a state nursing home and take control of the estate ourselves." The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum. Tiffany's face went pale, the color draining away like blood from a tourniquet. Liam put his head in his hands. Harrison turned to the judge. "This is not a guardianship hearing, Your Honor," he said. "This is an attempted robbery. And one more thing." Harrison opened the will. The character clause. He read it aloud. "Beneficiary must demonstrate integrity and unwavering loyalty to the grantor's spouse." He pointed a finger at Liam. "They banned him from the wedding. They sued him. They tried to commit him to an institution based on lies." "The clause is breached," Harrison declared. Judge Vance slammed her gavel. The sound was like a gunshot. "Case dismissed with prejudice," she ruled. Her voice was cold steel. "I am sanctioning the plaintiffs for filing a frivolous lawsuit. You will pay all legal fees." "Motion to dissolve the trust, Your Honor," Harrison added quickly. "Granted," the judge said. She didn't hesitate. The gavel banged again. $20 million vanished from Liam's future, just like that. We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway felt miles long. Liam ran after us. His footsteps slapped against the marble floor. "Dad! Wait!" I didn't stop. I kept walking toward the exit, toward the rain. Harrison leaned in close to my ear. "We aren't done, Arthur. Elena found the bank accounts," he whispered. "Because of the lawsuit, we can legally freeze all pending transactions to protect the estate while the dissolution is processed." "Do it," I said. "The checks for the wedding," Harrison warned. "They've already written them. They were expecting the trust fund to clear on Monday." "Do it," I repeated. Harrison smiled. It was a shark smile. Consider it frozen. The wedding was tomorrow. Liam and Tiffany had written checks based on money they didn't have. They were about to find out that the bank of Dad was permanently closed. Saturday, October 15th, the sky was a cruel, perfect blue. It was the kind of day photographers pray for. Crisp golden light, low humidity. I didn't wear a suit. My suit was hanging in the back of the closet, wrapped in plastic, reserved for funerals. Today wasn't a funeral. It was an amputation. I put on my gardening trousers, the knees stained with the chlorophyll of 100 weeds. I buttoned my old flannel shirt, the one with the frayed collar. It smelled of earth and diesel. I pulled on my work boots. I walked out to the driveway. My rusty pickup truck sat there, an eyesore against the manicured lawn. The engine coughed to life, a rough mechanical rattle that shook the steering wheel. I drove to the Sterling Country Club. The gates were open. I bypassed the valet stand. The young man in the red vest stepped forward, hand raised, a look of horror on his face, as he saw the rust on my fenders. I didn't stop. I drove past him, tires crunching on the pristine white gravel, and parked near the service entrance, next to a dumpster. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was wrong. A wedding venue should vibrate with energy, music, laughter, the clinking of glass, but the air here was dead. It felt like an operating room after the flatline tone has sounded. I walked toward the patio. It was chaos. Not the chaos of celebration, but the chaos of evacuation. A florist van was backed up onto the grass, its tires churning the perfect turf into mud. Two men were aggressively loading massive arrangements of white lilies back into the cargo bay. They weren't arranging them, they were throwing them. The bar was shuttered, metal grates pulled down. The band was packing up. The drummer was dismantling his kit, slamming cymbals into cases with unnecessary force. Why? Because the circulation had stopped. The money had dried up. I stepped onto the main lawn. The wedding planner saw me first. She was a woman in a headset who looked like she was vibrating with stress. Her clipboard was clutched to her chest like a shield. "He's here!" she screamed. Her voice cracked. "The father!" The crowd parted. Liam stood at the altar. He looked like a ghost. His skin was the color of old parchment. He saw me, and for a second, hope flared in his eyes, a desperate, pathetic spark. Tiffany was standing 10 feet away. Her dress was half-zipped, the back gaping open like a surgical wound. She wasn't crying anymore. She was hyperventilating. And then Marcus Sterling stomped over. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my truck. He was chewing an unlit cigar, reducing the end to pulp. His face was a mask of fury. "Dad!" Liam cried, stumbling forward. He almost fell. "Thank God. You came. Fix this. Liam begged, grabbing my arm. His grip was wet and trembling. Write the check. They're leaving. Everyone is leaving. Marcus Sterling shoved Liam aside. About time you showed up, old man, he sneered. He smelled of scotch and aggression. Your boy here wrote checks that bounced higher than a rubber ball. Even the ice sculpture guy is threatening to sue. Pay the bill, Marcus commanded. Now, or I bury him. I stood there. I felt the sun on my neck. I looked at the terrified guests, the ruined flowers, the silent band. I can't, I said. The words hung in the air. What do you mean you can't? Marcus roared. Veins bulged in his neck. You have the trust? The trust is gone, I said. My voice was calm, level. The silence that followed was deafening. It was the sound of a heart stopping. You sued me to prove I was incompetent, I said, looking directly at Liam. You proved you had no loyalty. The character clause was triggered, I continued. I dissolved the trust this morning at 8 a.m. Harrison filed the paperwork. I looked at Tiffany. She had stopped breathing. The money is going to the hospital, I said. All of it, $20 million for a new pediatric wing. Tiffany whispered, What? All of it? She choked out. Every cent, I said. The wedding planner stepped forward, her face purple. You have 5 minutes to pay the outstanding balance of $250,000, she yelled. Or I call the police for theft of services and fraud. Liam fell to his knees. Literally, he collapsed into the grass, his expensive suit staining green. Dad, please, he begged. Tears streamed down his face, wrecking the makeup he had worn for the photos. I'm sorry, I'll do anything. Just pay this one bill. I'm begging you. I owe him, Liam whispered, pointing at Marcus. He'll kill me. I looked down at him, my son, the boy I raised, the man who tried to put me in a cage so he could gamble away his inheritance. I reached into my pocket. The crowd held its breath. Tiffany's eyes lit up with a flicker of greed. She thought I was bluffing. She thought the checkbook was coming out. I pulled out a piece of paper. It was crumpled. It had been in my pocket since the day I wrote it. I dropped it. It fluttered down through the still air, rocking back and forth, and landed on the grass at Liam's knees. The $1 check. You asked for a contribution, I said. Here it is. I turned my back. Dad, Liam screamed. It was a raw, animal sound. Behind me a shriek pierced the air. You fraud, Tiffany screamed. I heard the sound of something heavy hitting the ground, her engagement ring. Then, the heavy thud of footsteps. You ruin me, I ruin you, Marcus Sterling shouted. I didn't turn around. I heard the scuffle, the grunt of exertion. Get off me, Marcus roared. I glanced in the reflection of the glass doors. Get off me, Marcus roared. I glanced in the reflection of the glass doors. 2 private security guards hired to keep the riffraff out had tackled Marcus Sterling to the ground. He was thrashing, but they held him fast. I walked to my truck. I opened the door. The metal creaked, a comforting, familiar sound. I climbed in. I started the engine. As I drove away, I saw the flashing lights of a police cruiser turning into the main gate. The authorities had arrived. But the patient was already dead. The drive home was a blur. The adrenaline that had sustained me, the fight-or-flight hormone that floods the system during a crisis, began to metabolize. My hands started to shake on the steering wheel. Not from fear, but from the crash. I pulled over 3 blocks from my house. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence. The rain had stopped, but the trees were still dripping. Drip, 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 like an IV line running slow. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt the profound, heavy exhaustion that comes after a 14-hour surgery where the patient lived, but just barely. When I finally pulled into my driveway, a police cruiser was waiting. They weren't there to arrest me. They were there for a statement. Marcus Sterling had assaulted a security guard. He was in custody. They needed to know what I saw. I invited the officers in. I sat in the armchair, the one Tiffany had wiped down. I told them the truth. I told them about the threats, the extortion, the ambush at the wedding. They took notes in small notebooks. They looked at me with pity. I hated the pity. The weeks that followed were a slow, painful debridement, the removal of dead tissue so healing could begin. The scandal didn't just break. It exploded. In our small town, news travels faster than a virus. Harrison came over on a Tuesday evening. The house was full of boxes. I was packing. I couldn't stay here anymore. The air felt contaminated. Every time I looked at the kitchen table, I saw the invoice. Every time I looked at the door, I saw Liam checking his tie in the reflection. Harrison sat on a stack of books. He held a manila folder. "The dust is settling," he said. "Tell me," I replied. "I was wrapping Eleanor's good china in newspaper." "Tiffany filed for annulment this morning," Harrison said. "She cited financial misrepresentation. She claims Liam defrauded her regarding his assets." "She cut him loose," I said, "like a gangrenous limb." "Faster," Harrison noted. "She scrubbed her social media. She's playing the victim. She says she was duped by a con artist." I taped a box shut. The sound was a harsh rip. "And Liam," Harrison took off his glasses. He looked tired. "Marcus Sterling is suing him," he said quietly, "for the gambling debts. He has promissory notes, Arthur, signed in ink. Liam has no money." I said. "The trust is gone." "I know," Harrison said. "He declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy yesterday. He lost the condo. The BMW was repossessed. His credit is ruined." "Where is he?" "He's staying in a motel on Route 9, Harrison said. "He got a job." I paused. My hands hovered over a teacup. "Doing what?"
"Shirtwear store," Harrison said. "Lumber department."
"He's loading trucks." I closed my eyes. Liam, who thought manual labor was beneath him. Liam, who wanted to be a brand. Now he was lifting 2x4s for minimum wage. "And Dr. Thorne?" I asked. The medical board didn't hesitate. Harrison said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "We submitted the affidavit and the bank records showing Sterling's donation. Quid pro quo. His license is suspended pending a full hearing. He won't practice medicine again. It was a clean sweep. The infection had been treated. The bacteria had been neutralized. But the patient May was left with a hollow chest. "You don't have to sell the house, Arthur," Harrison said gently. "It's paid for. It's your home." I looked around the living room. I looked at the shadows on the wall where the pictures used to hang. "No," I said. "It's a museum of a life that doesn't exist anymore. I need a sterile field. I need a fresh start." "Where will you go?" "The cabin," I said. "By the lake. It's small. It's quiet. It's far away from the noise." Harrison nodded. He stood up and dusted off his pants. "I'll help you load the truck," he said. The silence of the cabin wasn't empty. It was full. In the suburbs, silence felt like a vacuum. A lack of noise, a held breath waiting for the next crisis. Here, by the lake, silence had weight. It was the sound of water lapping against the pilings, the wind moving through the pines, the settling of old timber. It was the sound of a patient breathing on their own. After the machines are turned off, I wasn't the same man anymore. The Arthur Miller, who wiped his hands on a rag and let people walk over him, was gone. He had died on the operating table. I walked down to the dock. The wood was gray and weathered, stripped of varnish but strong. I sat on the edge, my legs dangling over the dark water. The morning mist was lifting, revealing the lake like a slow reveal of a surgical field. I cast my line. The reel sang, a high, thin whine before the lure hit the water with a soft plip. I didn't fish to catch anything. I fished to practice patience, to remind myself that you can't force the outcome. You can only prepare for it. Footsteps on the gravel path. I didn't turn. I knew the cadence. Heavy, deliberate, slightly uneven. Harrison sat down beside me. He didn't say hello. He just placed a thermos of coffee between us. He took off his glasses and began the ritual breath, cloth, polish. "You look Harrison paused, searching for the word oxygenated. "I feel it," I said. "The air is better here." "I brought the mail," Harrison said. He tapped a thick envelope on the dock. From the hospital board, I watched my bobber float in the ripples. "What do they want? Another affidavit?" "No," Harrison said. "They want approval." "Approval for what?" "For the sign," Harrison said. "The new pediatric wing. They're naming it the Eleanor Miller Center for Cardiac Care." I smiled. It started as a small movement in my chest and worked its way up. A real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. "She would have hated that." I laughed softly. "She would have said it was too flashy. She hated having her name on things." "Maybe," Harrison chuckled, putting his glasses back on. But she would have been proud of the work. They're breaking ground next month. $20 million buys a lot of second chances for sick kids. It does, I whispered. Suddenly, the tip of my rod jerked down. The line went tight. You've got one, Harrison said. I reeled it in. It was a fight. A small, frantic struggle against the inevitable. I felt the vibration of life through the cork handle. I brought the fish to the surface. A bass, shimmering green and gold in the morning light. It thrashed, gasping for oxygen in a world it wasn't built for. I reached down and carefully removed the hook. I held the fish for a moment, its heart beat against my palm, rapid, terrified, alive. I thought of Liam. I thought of the motel on Route 9. I thought of the lumber yard. He was struggling now, gasping in a new world. But he was alive. He had to learn to breathe on his own. I couldn't pump the blood for him anymore. Go on, I whispered to the fish. I lowered my hand. The fish stayed still for a second, stunned, and then flash. It was gone, back into the deep. You let him go, Harrison observed. I did, I said.
He has to swim his own way.
He called me. You know, Harrison said quietly. Liam. I stared at the water. And? He asked if you were okay. That's all. He didn't ask for money. I nodded. It wasn't redemption. Not yet, but it was a start. It was a heartbeat. Time will tell, I said. The sun crested the tree line, flooding the lake with gold. It warmed my face. It felt good. Same time. Next week? Harrison asked, standing up and brushing off his trousers. You bet, I said. Bring donuts. Harrison walked back up the path. I stayed for a moment longer. I packed up my gear. My hands were steady. My chest was clear. I turned and looked at the cabin. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, a thin gray ribbon against the blue sky. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a venue. It wasn't a brand. It was home. And for the first time in a long time, the man living in it was whole. Arthur's diagnosis of his own life required a steady hand and the courage to make a deep cut. Sometimes the hardest surgeries are the ones we perform on ourselves to remove the toxicity that holds us back. If you felt the weight of that silence and the relief of the final healing, and if you believe that integrity is the only currency that truly matters, join us. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that don't just entertain but cut straight to the bone.